Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. In modern times, the power of music as a force for good has seen quite a number of concerts or festivals organized with that aim in mind. These include the Woodstock Festival, held in America in 1969, and Rock Against Racism, which took place in Britain in 1976. But the most urgent, epic, and crucial in history is the now legendary One Love Peace concert, which took place in Kingston, Jamaica 45 years ago. The show was popularly referred to in the media at the time as the Jamaican Woodstock. The concert was an initiative designed to bring unity and peace to the island, which at that time was being torn apart by a bloody political conflict which had claimed over 2,000 lives and was on the verge of escalating into a full-blown civil war. Ironically, this mission to unite the country was the brainchild of two of the most dangerous men in Jamaica, political enforcers and arch-enemies who controlled several hundred or even thousands of armed and fiercely loyal thugs. But as Jah would orchestrate it, the pair would come together to pull strings in high places, and the result was a history-making concert that decades later is regarded as one of the greatest shows ever held, with sensational performances from the hottest Jamaican artists of that era, as well as the grand return from exile of reggae's king and global ambassador. It certainly was one of the most momentous occasions in Jamaican history, loaded with unbelievable drama, comedy, tension, and one of the most iconic images in popular culture. It was the night that Rastafari, after many years of being oppressed and isolated by much of Jamaican society, was called upon to save a dying country. Let's take a look at the awesome story of the One Love Peace concert. The story of Jamaica's political crisis began with the election of Prime Minister Marley in 1972 under the banner of the left-wing People's National Party, or the PNP. Marley was opposed very aggressively by then opposition leader Edward Seaga of the right-wing Conservative Jamaican Labour Party, or the JLP. For context, that period was the height of the Cold War between the US and the Soviet Union. Michael Manley was the darling of the Soviet Eastern Bloc, while the Harvard-educated Seaga the darling of the US and Western side of the fence. This ideological divide and of course external influences helped escalate these political differences and led to violence on the streets, as both politicians hired local gangsters to serve as their political muscle. The two most notorious enforcers in those days were Claude Massop of the JLP and Bucky Marshall supporting the PNP. Their foot soldiers waged savage conflict on the streets of Kingston, and the capital was crudely divided along party lines, and ordinary innocent people who lived in one area couldn't cross over to other areas without fear. By 1976, the violence had gotten so bad that hundreds of lives had been lost, and even Bob Marley, his wife and manager were almost killed when gunmen stormed Bob's house over his decision to play a peace concert which had been endorsed by Michael Manley. All three had escaped with gunshot wounds, and Bob fled to exile in the UK for almost 2 years. As violence spiraled out of control, Prime Minister Michael Manley declared a state of emergency in 1976, and the authorities arrested 500 people for plotting to overthrow the government. Claude Massop was among those locked up, and as Jah would have it, his cellmate was none other than his arch-enemy Bucky Marshall. But rather than kill each other, both men made peace while locked up and made a pact to end the violence in their country. Claude Massop was first released in January of 1977 when the government lifted the state of emergency, while Bucky Marshall walked out of jail a year after, and the first thing he did when he was free was to link up with Claude. Both men would participate in a candlelight vigil that evening and called for a truce at daybreak. The two, along with other Kingston crime bosses like Tony Welch and Earl Techlife Wadley, formed what they called the Peace Committee. They concluded that the best way to stop the violence was to harness the power of music as a uniting force via what would be the mother of all concerts, and the money from the show would go into rehabilitating large areas of the ghettos in Kingston. But they needed the presence of the most popular and most beloved figure from Jamaica, someone who transcended political ideology and was universally adored by all. Of course, this person was Bob Marley. But the problem was, the tough gong was away in London on self-imposed exile, but they got to work anyway. Claude Massop, Tony Welch and Techlife flew to London to meet face-to-face with Bob. Bob had been disillusioned about being attacked by his own brethren 2 years earlier and was skeptical about returning. But they convinced him that his presence would go a long way in diffusing the red-hot violence in Jamaica. Bob agreed to do the show, but on the condition that they get the Ethiopian Orthodox Church involved, as well as all the Rasta families, whether Bobo Ashanti or 12 tribes of Israel. His final request was to fix a date close to the anniversary of Emperor Haile Selassie's visit to Jamaica, which had taken place on April 21st, 1966. He wanted this concert to be something that would really unite the whole country, and the Rastafarian movement was key. The Peace Committee contacted popular promoter and artist Tommy Cowan and gave him the task of putting the show together. Tommy Cowan went to work and secured the participation of the biggest reggae acts in Jamaica at the time, a star-studded lineup of Bob Marley and the Wailers, Peter Tosh, Culture, Bonnie Wailer, U-Roy, Inner Circle, The Mighty Diamonds, and several others. The show was slated for April 22nd at the National Stadium in Kingston, exactly 12 years since the visit of His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie. The show began at 5 p.m. with over 30,000 people in attendance. The first on stage was harmony group The Melodians, followed by Althea and Donna, who performed their #1 hit, Uptown Ranking Dub, as well as dancehall DJ Dillinger, Culture, and Dennis Brown, delivering splendid performances that electrified the crowd. But that was just the beginning. The second half of the show kicked off with Jacob Miller and Inner Circle. Jacob Miller pulled off an animated, brilliant, and humorous set, during which, despite the presence of Prime Minister Michael Manley, Edward Siaga, and other top government functionaries, he lit a humongous spliff and offered it to a policeman standing just next to the stage, before grabbing the inspector's hat, putting it on his head, to the delight of the crowd. He ended his performance by calling Claudie Massop, Tech Life, Tony Welch, and Bucky Marshall on stage for a demonstration of the Peace Pact. After outstanding performances by Big Youth, Dennis Brown, and Beres Hammond, came the fierce 1-hour masterclass in musical militancy by Peter Tosh. Even though Bob Marley was supposed to be the headliner of the concert, Peter, in between songs, delivered a fiery dress down and roast of the political leadership that was seated just a few meters in front of the stage, blaming them for all the troubles in Jamaica. This whipped up the crowd like no one else had done the entire evening. All the while, Peter was blowing his herb smoke in the face of the Prime Minister, the Commissioner of Police, members of Parliament, as well as officials of the Diplomatic Corps. Neville Garrick, who was there, said that Malcolm Manley's police security detail were furious at what Peter was doing, but couldn't lay a finger on him for fear of sparking a riot in the stadium. The audience was still in shock when the main attraction, Bob Marley, hit the stage for what went down as a spiritually charged, artistically exquisite set. After setting the stadium alight with songs like Natural Mystic, Trench Town Rock, and Natty Dread, Bob began to perform jamming, and halfway through the song, the spirits seemed to take over. Bob got down to some heavy spiritual skanking, and on the spur of the moment, invited the arch enemies, Prime Minister Michael Manley and Edward Siaga, up on stage. Edward Siaga was the first on stage, but Michael Manley seemed reluctant to follow. But as if Jah was sending a warning, a lightning bolt hit the stadium as Bob kept on repeating his invitation. With Michael Manley now on stage, Bob, in one of the most iconic moments in political as well as cultural history, brought both men together and clasped their hands in the air together above his head in the ultimate show of unity. It was a spiritual, unscripted act of heavy symbolism and significance by Bob, and a spectacular end to a phenomenal night of music, harmony, and hope. The epic concerts ushered in a wonderful period of peace that lasted for 2 years. But by the 1980 elections, the violence had returned and claimed many lives. The founders of the Peace Committee also passed away not too long after the show. Claudie Massop was killed by the police in strange circumstances in 1979, while Bucky Marshall, who had fled Jamaica, was murdered in a New York nightclub in March 1980. But all in all, the concert was no failure. It was successful to the extent that it reduced the intensity and rate of violence significantly in the country. It also broke the political deadlock and opened the door to dialogue that wasn't even a possibility before it took place. It's good to mention that Edward Siaga and Michael Manley came together again in 1981 at Bob Marley's funeral. The One Love Peace concert is considered to be among the greatest music festivals of all time across all genres. It's certainly gone down as a defining moment in Jamaican history, as well as the story of reggae music. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.